Hey guys, so today's video is going to be absolutely packed with information that I usually only share with my students. And I say packed because I want to try and fit 20 years of semen retention experience into 20 minutes of content. And I would like for you to have a framework to get you through those first 30 to 90 days of semen retention. Now, semen retention comes with a lot of benefits, but it also comes with a few risks. So it's really important to approach this practice the right way. It requires a level of mastery that is quite demanding and that cannot be accomplished through just sheer discipline or through some cookie cutter step-by-step process. And I would say the right way to approach it is actually like an initiation, where you allow yourself to sit in the intensity of your sexual desire, kind of like sitting in a fire and allowing yourself to be forged by that fire into something else. And being able to manage that fire will define whether you're building a nuclear reactor versus an atomic bomb. So it's quite important. And so the goal of this video is for you to get through those first 90 days of semen retention without blowing yourself up. Now, when I take people through the sexual mastery mentorship, there are 4 specific stages to the initiation process: liberation, cultivation, circulation, and integration. Now, this first stage usually surprises people because they expect me to talk about control, willpower, discipline. But you can't control what you're not connected to. Sexual discipline doesn't work as long as your desire is shackled to shame. And so we have to set it free first. We have to set our desire free from shame first by realizing that our sexual desire is inherently good. It is just misdirected. And that is the first step of sexual mastery. If you want to take command of something, you have to have it close to you. And so you want more connection, not less. You want more embodiment, not less. And so shame-driven discipline and willpower is a recipe for a disaster for this reason, because now you're actually building that nuclear bomb and not a nuclear reactor. By the way, control is only needed when you have too much energy in too small of a space, because it's going to look for a way out, and you'll quickly realize this as you practice semen retention, because that intensity will be building inside of your body day by day. So does this mean that you have to meet that increasing intensity with increasingly more control? No. It means that you have to learn how to create more space inside of your body. And when I say the body, I actually mean your nervous system, because that is where the charge is held. Control means contraction, and what you actually want is expansion, and expansion is accomplished through relaxation, because if you relax, the nervous system will expand and it will increase its capacity to hold more charge and hold more intensity. Now, there are endless ways to relax your body and to relax your nervous system, but it really comes down to presence, because presence creates order and order creates peace. I've never shared this analogy publicly before, but I often illustrate this with a movie clip from The Lion King. So you have this scene where there's Simba sitting next to Mufasa on this edge of a cliff, right? And he famously says,
"Everything the light touches is our kingdom."
And where the light doesn't shine, that's outside of the kingdom. We don't have governance there. That is the elephant graveyard. So you shouldn't go there. It's dangerous. And the light here can also represent presence or awareness. And the kingdom is an analogy for the body. Wherever the light shines in our body, wherever there's presence in our body, we have authority and we have governance. Because light brings order, order brings peace, and peace brings about life. And this is why there is no life in those elephant graveyards. And the thing is, we all have these elephant graveyards inside our own bodies. These are the parts of us where we lost control and something else is governing. And these are the places where our addiction exists. These are the places where our compulsive and destructive behaviors exist. Not because that part is bad, but simply because the king is absent. And so reclaiming the kingdom is not done through control, it is done through masculine presence. Control only matters at the borders, just to make sure that nothing comes in that doesn't belong there. And so what this means for us is that we want to be saying yes to our desire on the inside, but saying no to it on the outside. Liberation on the inside and containment on the outside. And this containment, which is accomplished through discipline, is really important because you want to have a container that doesn't leak, so that you can cultivate masculine presence, which is the invisible fabric that holds the sexual energy. And that is stage number 2, which is cultivation. Metaphysically speaking, you could actually say that the masculine holds the feminine. The more presence you have, the more capacity you have to hold and retain the sexual energy, which is crucial, of course, if you're practicing semen retention. And that means that presence equals power. And so the number one enemy to that is distraction, because what distraction does is it fragments that fabric, it fragments that force field, so to speak. And so it's no wonder that the world wants you permanently distracted, because presence is power. And so if you're not able to, for example, to focus for more than 5 minutes, you have a problem, because you will feel chronically disempowered, even if you're practicing semen retention. And so if you're wondering, where are my superpowers? This could be why.
Okay, ready.
Ooh, on second thought, I got something I gotta do back on Krypton.
Remember when I said that all of us have these elephant graveyards inside of us, right? Well, these are the parts of us that got disconnected from the whole along the way through, for example, things like shame or trauma, or simply because your environment rejected those aspects of yourself. And these are the parts where the light of our presence doesn't reach anymore. And so these parts got disconnected, went rogue, so to speak, and then turned against us. And this is where your addiction and your compulsive behaviors exist. And so when people talk about shadow work, this is what they're referring to. They refer to dealing with these disconnected aspects of the self. Not to embrace our dark side, so to speak, as many people will claim in the Tantra scene, but to simply illuminate those blind spots so that they can be integrated as part of the kingdom. And this is where semen retention really shines, because what it does is it illuminates those shadows and it makes it easier for you to identify them. Now, obviously, that's not going to be a pleasant experience, but this is really where the rubber hits the road and where real change happens. And this is also why it's a very bad idea to suppress your sexual desire, because you need the sexual desire to show you the way. You need the sexual desire to illuminate and to map out your inner landscape. And the more you can say yes to that on the inside, but keep it contained on the outside, the more efficient this shadow work will be, and the more energetic and alive you will feel. Now, in the beginning of this video, I've mentioned that there are certain risks tied to semen retention, right? And I would say that the biggest risk is probably that of stagnant sexual energy. In the same way, for example, when you have like a river, you can drink running water, but you can drink stagnant and pooling water because it becomes toxic quite quickly. And so next to cultivation, we also want to make sure we have proper circulation of the sexual energy, and that is stage number 3. Now, stagnation can have to do with shame, but it can also have to do with pride. For example, when we get too attached to the energy and the power that we feel in our bodies. And so instead of letting it move through us and do what it needs to do, we hold on to it and we grab onto it, which is something you see all the time in the nofap community. It becomes a power play, essentially, as a way to compensate for a deeper sense of disempowerment. And this is an indication that we need a deeper healing to happen. And I've mentioned in previous videos that me also, like for several years, I I was using semen retention to compensate for this deeper sense of disempowerment. Since I used the acquired magnetism to attract women, which is more to do about seeking validation than actually seeking a proper wife. And so for a few years, I noticed there was a certain flatlining to my spiritual progress. And so that's just something that it's good to be aware of. Now, lack of circulation is also the argument that so-called experts use to point out the risk of prostate cancer. And while this study on which this claim is based is extremely flawed, in theory it does make sense that stagnant energy could lead to disease. But that's true on all levels, right? Not just for sexual energy. And practically speaking, I have yet to meet somebody who got prostate cancer from practicing semen retention. And I've worked with hundreds of men over the past 8 years. So there's that. And again, there are countless of ways to circulate your sexual energy. For example, having an active lifestyle is already a major advantage, but there's also more intentional practices. For example, Tai Chi or breath work or self-massage or slapping your balls. Maybe you've seen it somewhere from, who was it? The Certified Hell Nut, I think. Sometimes I recommend people to just get naked and just jump upside down, because what it does is really literally slaps your testicles against your body. Like if you have a trampoline, it's even better. And that will really get your balls rolling. Ultimately, it really comes down to learning how to manage your sexual fire, just like you would manage like a campfire. You want to have a contained space, but with enough airflow to allow for circulation. You want to have a clean fire with the right amount of wood and the right kind of wood. For example, you don't want to be feeding it plastic, right? And so you want to be in control of what comes into your body, because what comes in determines the quality of the fire and of the quality of the process of your transmutation. And I'm not just talking about things like food, I'm also talking about things like excessive information through your phone or through your laptop. And again, this is where things like breath work really play a huge role, because what it does is it helps you regulate this fire. You want to have a contained fire. You don't want to have a wildfire. However, most people who fail, they don't fail because they don't tend to the fire. They fail simply because they jump out of the fire. They can't deal with the discomfort that comes with standing in the intensity of the fire. And of course, this is going to happen to all of us at some point, right? But if this is the case, then more techniques and more practices is actually not going to be useful. What is going to be useful is finding people that can keep you accountable and that are willing to face those same challenges with you together. And this is something that will get easier over time. Like initially, you need a certain level of vigilance and control and discipline. But as you start reclaiming and integrating those disconnected aspects of yourself, you are going to start restoring your inner ecosystem. Meaning that your internal world is going to become more of a self-regulating system that needs less and less intervention, where every part of you is going to start regulating and balancing every other part of you. And so you become this self-regulating, self-autonomous ecosystem. And this is the final stage, number 4, which is integration. And this integration of all the parts is something we call integrity, meaning your body, your soul, and your spirit are all in alignment. What your body wants is the same thing that your soul and your spirit wants. There's no more inner conflict. There's no conflict between your heart's desire and your body's desire. And this is really sexual liberation, not to be free to have all the sex you want, but to be free from sex. Sex no longer controls you. It simply now gets subjugated to a higher authority. And at this stage, it's no longer about control, it's about connection, because connection ensures integration and integration ensures integrity. Now, there is one more thing that unequivocally determines the outcome of our transformation process, and that is alignment. And this is sometimes the part where I lose a few people along the way, but that's okay. But even though we are a self-regulating autonomous system, we are who we are based on who and what we are in relation to everything else. And this relationship determines the ultimate outcome. And so there is inner alignment, but there's also outer alignment. And this outer alignment is expressed on both a horizontal as well as a vertical level. Horizontal level meaning the physical world, and a vertical level meaning the spiritual world. Now, usually when people start semen retention, they start off with rather like worldly goals, and then they progressively start aiming higher. For example, you start off with like quitting porn. Then maybe you go to the gym. You think about eating healthy. You start getting better with women, sexual performance, finding a wife, becoming a good person. And eventually you end up being in a vertical position, which is the alignment with God. And I'm pretty proud of myself. I was able to talk for 15 minutes without uttering the word God. And so initially we tend to measure ourselves, our progress, by comparing ourselves to the world. But then eventually you come into a vertical position where you start comparing yourself to God, God being the standard of perfection with like a capital S, right? And this is the point where you tap into your highest potential for transformation. It's kind of like you're trying to build a puzzle while having the box beside you to have an idea of what wholeness looks like. And since we are created in His image, aligning ourselves with that image helps us restore our original self, back to wholeness, back to authenticity, and back to innocence. And it's at this point that the process becomes a process of pure grace, as long as we stay in alignment. And that's what worship actually is, because we become what we worship. If we worship the world, we become like the world. If we worship God, we become like God. And everybody worships something, even the atheists, or especially the atheists, right? So the question is, what are we currently worshiping? And this brings us back to our original example of whether we are building a nuclear power plant or an atomic bomb. The same energy source, but of course a very different outcome, right? One generates and the other one degenerates. And so semen retention is not some kind of magical pill that solves all of our problems. It is just pure potential that still needs to be cultivated, circulated, integrated, and eventually subjugated to a governing force that transcends it, and resisting all the worldly temptations every step of the way until we enter this vertical relationship through the thing that transcends all. So guys, thanks for watching. If you need extra help with this, all the links are down below, and I'll see you next week.